So we've got an actually good picture of a new Kasrkin model. The new Lord Castellan is confirmed to be Creed's daughter, and some interesting new options on the reimagined Sentinel. Let's talk about Games Workshop's guard reveals. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're talking guard, where it seems that Games Workshop have chosen to follow up those leaks that came out over the weekend with a whole bunch of interesting previews, and some really cool pictures of the new models that were leaked from those teaser images. They've provided us a little bit of clarification, some better pictures, and a few more interesting details, but no firm concrete information as to when the Astra Militarum Codex might eventually drop for 9th edition, so presumably that could still be a fairly good way off. It is kind of telling that we're getting Leagues of Votan rules previews already, and we haven't had a whisper for the Guard yet until their hand was forced by a leak. We talked about the image when it first dropped. It was this one of a whole bunch of Cadians fighting off against the Genestealers of High Fleet Leviathan. The most prominent models in the foreground were the new Creed, the reimagined Sentinel, and the Kasrkin, but there's a bunch of interesting squads in the back, like a new command squad, special weapon teams, and new heavy weapons as well, plus a brooding commissar behind the lines too. Today they've decided to acknowledge the leak exists. Sometimes they do decide to do this and sometimes they don't. I think it depends how long in advance it's leaked usually. For example, they didn't comment at all on when the Heresy box leaked towards the end of 2021 because it was a long way out. Maybe because the fact that they're actually willing to talk about these might be that the Guard Codex isn't quite as far away as that was. I think I would be surprised if the Guard Codex wasn't out in the later half of 2022. Generally, I think it's usually in their interest to actually talk about leaks and show off some cooler pictures themselves. I think they generally want people to come to them more often, as opposed to the best sources of Warhammer news being random people posting things on Reddit. So it certainly makes sense for them to reveal more interesting stuff on their side, so people are coming to them as the main source of news. In any case, what we've got is a very short video, but the main thing being a few different pictures of the 3 different models: Ursula Creed, new Cadian Kasrkin, and the new Sentinel. They're basically deciding to address everything in the foreground of the shot and leave everything that was hiding in the background till a later date. In the video, they gave us a nice inspiring quote: "Duty and faith, Cadia and the God Emperor, I fight for them all as my father did before me, so fight my brothers and sisters, for as long as we defy darkness, Cadia stands." That's attributed to Ursula Creed, Lord Castellan of Cadia. The miniatures that they've revealed aren't really full reveals, they're more sort of better images with a little bit of teasers of text, so we don't yet have full breakdowns of all the options on the kits, but still there are a fair few interesting new details. First up we have the new Castellan Creed. Ursula Creed is following in her father's footsteps, as he was basically taken hostage by Trazyn the Infinite following the fall of Cadia, though she does appear to be sporting a whole bunch of her father's heirlooms. She is confirmed to be Creed's daughter, who has apparently been mentioned in the fluff a few times before, though apparently it's not a case of direct nepotism, the Cadian forces being a very meritocratic society, with the most competent generals rising to the top, and there isn't room for being carried if you don't have the ability. Model-wise, she's looking fairly imposing, a power sword in the right hand, a command rod inlaid with a few jewels on the left, and it appears that Cadian icon thing is more attached to her base and the metalwork at the back, rather than being one of the classic 40k back banners. They do look kind of cool on Space Marines and things, but for actual practical generals in the field, it doesn't really feel all that useful. I guess that's why you have standard bearers in the Guard. In the article, they do call attention to the fact that she's wearing the same greatcoat and it's rather tattered with some holes in the back. Though, as they pose the question on Warhammer Community, it does wonder how she managed to get that, seeing as they say that Creed was wearing that when he was imprisoned. I guess the only way that you'd be getting your hands on that is if either Trazyn let Creed out from his collection, or there was some sort of daring rescue operation, though I wouldn't fancy the chances of just about any Imperial Guardsman going up against Necrons in their own domain. Sounds like that's a potentially interesting bit of fluff waiting to happen. Otherwise, there's a couple of options in the kit. There's a helmeted head version rather than the bare head, though to be honest I think I prefer the bare head one more than the helmeted one. And you can swap out the command rod for a set of binoculars if you want. That one I think I like a little bit more. I just feel that those red gems are just a little bit too standout really. It perhaps would have done better without them. Otherwise though, I think nice enough as a character miniature goes. Kind of cool to see the reimagining of all the trappings of Mr. Creed with his dual-wield pistols and everything. And being Lord Castellan of Cadia, she also gets just about the ultimate tactical rock as well, what looks like some ruined city terrain and a fallen Cadian's helmet. Overall, I think they've done the model well enough, though it does make me wonder whether or not you'll actually be able to field the old Creed and Kell in the new Guard Codex, or whether or not she'll be just a direct replacement for them. I guess if that is the case, you could always field the father's model with the rules of the daughter's datasheet. Their war gear is pretty similar besides that command rod, which looks optional anyway. Moving on, we come to the Kasrkin. Games Workshop's been a little bit more stingy with the preview shots of these. We've only got the image of just one model, despite being able to see 10 of them at least fairly well in the leaked picture. The Kasrkin are the Cadian stormtroopers armed with shot las guns, basically their equivalent of Tempestus scions, and at least in the lore they are Cadia specific, so these might not be available to all the regiments. As soon as I saw these, I did think that they're probably a kill team due to having a different base setup to all the rest of the miniatures in the picture. I think a few of the kill teams in the past have had different bases to represent where they're fighting on in their box's release. Not quite as much to say about this one. Overall, I think it's a really nice reimagining of the Kasrkin, and I think these are going to be really popular with people. I'd be pretty surprised if there wasn't at least a fairly generous assortment of special weapons in the kit. We know that there's a flamer and a Voxcaster type thing as options from the leak, but overall I think they've got a pretty interesting aesthetic going on, more militaristic and practical looking Tempestus scions with scoped hotshot lasguns. Finally, the biggest of Games Workshop's 3 previews is this new reimagined Sentinel. I did think that from that picture they'd probably be able to make either the Scout or the Armoured variant, as both of them were seen in the photo. They have confirmed that this looks like it's going to be an update to the old one, not just a different pattern of Sentinel released alongside it, and it seems like they will be replacing the current Scout and Armoured Sentinels with this. There's maybe been a bit of a mixed reaction to the aesthetic. I think on the whole it looks like a nicer model, but at least a few people maybe weren't quite as convinced about it looking a little bit more techy than the old one, and quite like the more simplistic and mechanical look of the first. The legs in particular do remind me a bit of the Space Marine Redemptor Dreadnought. There's definitely some similar vibes going on there. At least from the appearance of it, it does seem like it's a bit bigger than the previous one. I wouldn't be surprised if it had a bit of a higher points cost and maybe more wounds in game. Options wise, we know that the armoured one can still take the plasma cannon, and it's got a hunter-killer missile there. It looks like you can either swap out a searchlight or a set of smoke launchers, I think that is. And there's 2 other primary weapon options pictured as well, one a trusty heavy flamer, and then another one an interesting, very heavy looking rotary cannon type thing. I'm not sure if that's just a reimagined missile launcher or if that's going to be a brand new gun with a new profile. Just from the sheer size of it though, I wouldn't be too surprised if that could give the Sentinels a bit more oomph if it does have a different profile. Overall though, I do think that it looks like a nice model. I'd be pretty tempted to pick up a couple myself. I think I'd definitely have a bit of fun doing some magnetisation for the main guns on this. So let me know your thoughts on the new reveals then. Nice to have a few little insights and details clarified about that picture. There's only so much that you can tell when you can't see half the images that well, and it's pretty nice to see a few of the kit's alternate options. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Allspecs Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. I'll certainly cover any more news for the Imperial Guard, and I'll review the Astra Militarum Codex in full once it comes out. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Allspecs Tactics does have a Patreon page, which is down in the video description below. Making all the content does take a fair amount of time and effort, so if you are enjoying quite a bit, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few rewards, including seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.